Imagine waking up to the smell of smoke, your house filling with flames and only seconds to escape. For one family, that nightmare became reality, until their German shepherd Max did the unthinkable. This is the heart-stopping true story of loyalty, courage, and the dog who refused to let his family go down without a fight. Did your pet ever save you or surprise you with their bravery? Share your incredible stories in the comments below. Smash that like button if you believe dogs are heroes. Subscribe for more inspiring tales of animals who defied the odds. You won't believe what Max did next. The golden afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows of the Thompson household as 8-year-old Emily knelt on the floor, her small hands trembling with excitement. Before her, a fluffy German shepherd puppy with oversized paws and deep, soulful eyes tilted his head, studying her with curiosity. "We're naming him Max," Emily declared, her voice firm with the certainty only a child could possess. Her parents exchanged amused glances but didn't argue. The name suited him. From that moment, Max became more than just a pet. He was a guardian, a playmate, and a constant shadow trailing behind Emily wherever she went. He had an uncanny ability to sense emotions. When Emily scraped her knee during a backyard adventure, Max was there before the first tear fell, nudging her hand with his wet nose as if to say, "I'm here." When Mr. Thompson slumped onto the couch after a long day at work, Max would fetch his slippers, tail wagging with pride at his own usefulness. And at night, he took his self-appointed post beside Emily's bed, his ears twitching at every distant sound, ever watchful. The bond between Max and the Thompsons deepened with each passing day. He wasn't just a dog, he was family. His loyalty was unwavering, his presence a constant comfort. Whether it was playfully stealing socks from the laundry or resting his head on Mrs. Thompson's lap while she read, Max had a way of making even the most ordinary moments feel special. But no one could have predicted just how far that loyalty would go until the night the fire started. The evening had been like any other, cozy and uneventful. The Thompsons had gathered around the dinner table, sharing stories of their day, while Max lay curled near the fireplace, his ears occasionally flicking at the sound of laughter or the clinking of silverware. Outside, a cold winter wind rattled the window panes, but inside, the house was warm, filled with the comforting scent of roasted chicken and freshly baked bread. As the night deepened, the family settled into their routines. Mrs. Thompson tucked Emily into bed, humming a soft lullaby before pressing a kiss to her forehead. Mr. Thompson double-checked the locks on the doors, as he always did, while Max padded quietly behind him, his nails clicking against the hardwood floor. The fire in the hearth had burned down to glowing embers, casting flickering shadows across the walls. Everything was peaceful. Then, the first tendril of smoke curled up from the basement. At first, it was barely noticeable, just a faint, acrid scent drifting through the air. But Max's nose twitched, his head lifted, his ears standing rigid as he inhaled deeply. Something was wrong. The scent grew stronger, creeping under doorways, threading through the vents. Downstairs, unseen, a spark from an old electrical wire had ignited a pile of stored boxes, and now flames licked hungrily at the wooden beams. Max let out a low, warning growl, his body tensing. He trotted to Mrs. Thompson's side, nudging her leg insistently. "Not now, Max," she murmured absently, flipping a page in her book. But Max didn't relent. His barks, usually playful, were sharp and urgent. He dashed to Emily's room, then back to the living room, his paws skidding on the floor in his desperation. By the time the first smoke alarm finally screeched to life, the house was already filling with thick, choking smoke. The Thompsons coughed, their eyes stinging as they stumbled out of bed, disoriented. But Max didn't hesitate. He knew what to do. With one last, commanding bark, he turned and bolted toward the front door, his family following blindly through the haze. Outside, the freezing air hit their lungs like a slap. They gasped, their nightclothes dusted with ash, their hearts pounding. But as they turned back to look at their home, now glowing orange from within, one terrible realization struck them. Max wasn't beside them anymore. He had gone back inside. The first bark cut through the stillness of the night like a gunshot, sharp, insistent, impossible to ignore. Mrs. Thompson jolted awake, her heart hammering against her ribs as she struggled to make sense of the noise. Max never barked like this, not unless something was terribly wrong. "Max?" "What is it, boy?" she mumbled, rubbing her bleary eyes. But the dog didn't stop. He stood at the foot of the bed, his body rigid, his ears flat against his skull as he barked again, louder this time, more frantic. Then, before she could react, he lunged forward, gripping the edge of the blanket in his teeth and tugging with surprising strength. Down the hall, Emily stirred in her sleep, unaware of the danger creeping through the house. The smoke was thicker now, curling under doors, pooling near the ceiling. Max abandoned Mrs. Thompson and bolted toward Emily's room, his claws scrabbling against the hardwood in his urgency. He crashed through the half-open door and leaped onto the bed, barking directly into the little girl's face. Emily woke with a gasp, her eyes widening at the sight of Max's wild, desperate expression. Before she could speak, a shrill, ear-splitting shriek pierced the air, the smoke alarm. "Fire!" Mr. Thompson's voice roared from the hallway. The house was filling fast. Black smoke rolled through the corridors, stinging their eyes, clawing at their throats. Mrs. Thompson grabbed Emily's hand, yanking her from bed, while Mr. Thompson fumbled for the flashlight in his nightstand. Max darted ahead of them, leading the way, his body low to the ground where the air was still breathable. They stumbled forward, coughing, their vision blurred by tears. The front door seemed miles away. Then, just as they reached the living room, a deafening crack split the air. The ceiling above them groaned, sagging under the weight of the flames. Max didn't hesitate. With a final, commanding bark, he herded them toward the door, his body a living barrier between them and the collapsing house. The cold night air hit their faces as they spilled onto the lawn, gasping, their lungs burning. But as they turned, their relief turned to horror. Max wasn't with them. He had gone back inside. Emily's scream tore through the night air as Max disappeared back into the burning house. "Max!" No exclamation mark! She lunged forward, but her father's strong arms wrapped around her waist, holding her back as flames roared from the windows. The heat was unbearable, a wall of orange and black devouring their home. Tears streamed down Emily's soot-streaked face as she struggled against her father's grip. "We have to get him! He'll die!" Inside, Max moved through the smoke-filled hallway like a ghost, his body low to the ground where the air was marginally clearer. The fire roared around him, embers raining from the ceiling, but he didn't stop. His ears twitched at a faint sound, a high-pitched, terrified mewing coming from the kitchen. Whiskers, the family's elderly tabby cat, was trapped beneath a fallen cabinet, her green eyes wide with panic. Max's jaws closed gently around the scruff of Whiskers' neck as the cabinet above them groaned ominously. With one powerful tug, he freed her just as the flaming wood crashed down where she'd been trapped. The heat seared Max's fur as he turned, the cat dangling securely from his mouth, and charged back toward the front door. Outside, the Thompsons watched in horror as part of the roof collapsed in a shower of sparks. Firefighters arrived, their shouts mixing with the wail of sirens, but the family's eyes remained fixed on the doorway where Max had vanished. Just as Mrs. Thompson buried her face in her hands, a movement caught Emily's eye. "There! Look!" From the swirling smoke emerged a singed, limping figure. Max staggered forward, his golden fur blackened in patches, but Whiskers was safe in his jaws. The cat leaped free as Max collapsed at Emily's feet, his sides heaving. The little girl dropped to her knees, her arms wrapping around her hero as sobs racked her small body. Max lifted his head weakly to lick her tears, his tail giving one feeble thump against the grass. Around them, the firefighters worked to contain the blaze, but in that moment, nothing else mattered. Their home might be gone, but because of Max, their family was whole. As the first light of dawn touched the horizon, painting the smoke-streaked sky in hues of pink and gold, the Thompsons huddled together on the neighbor's lawn. Max lay with his head in Emily's lap, his breathing labored but steady. The vet who had rushed to the scene assured them he would recover. The burns were superficial, the smoke inhalation treatable. Mr. Thompson stroked Max's ears, his voice thick with emotion. "You brave, stupid dog," he whispered. "You could have died." Max simply closed his eyes, content. He had done what he was born to do: protect his family. No fire could change that. No danger could break that bond. In the ashes of their home, something unshakable remained: the love between a family and the dog who would cross through hell itself to keep them safe. The days following the fire passed in a haze of borrowed clothes, temporary shelter, and the lingering scent of smoke that clung to their skin. The Thompsons stayed with neighbors, their lives reduced to a few salvaged possessions and the clothes they had been wearing that night. But through it all, one constant remained: Max, his bandaged paws clicking softly on hardwood floors as he followed Emily everywhere, as if afraid to let her out of his sight. News of the heroic German shepherd spread quickly through their small town. By the second morning, reporters began appearing on the neighbor's doorstep, cameras in hand, asking to meet the dog who had saved a family. Emily clung to Max's collar protectively at first, wary of the strangers, but Max himself seemed to understand the importance of these visitors. He sat patiently as flashes went off, his ears perking up whenever someone said the word hero. The local fire department held a small ceremony in Max's honor. Chief Reynolds, a gruff man with kind eyes, knelt to drape a specially made medal around Max's neck, a shining disc engraved with the words, "For bravery beyond duty." The entire firehouse applauded as Max panted happily, his tail sweeping the floor in broad strokes. Most dogs would have run from that fire, Chief Reynolds told the gathered crowd, his voice thick with emotion. This one ran straight back into it, not once, but twice. That's not just training, that's love. At school, Emily became known as the girl with the hero dog. Classmates asked endless questions, their eyes wide as she described how Max had barked them awake, how he had led them through the smoke. But when they asked if she was scared, Emily would simply shake her head and say, "Not when Max was there." The Thompsons began rebuilding their lives, finding a rental home while their house was reconstructed. The first night in their temporary home, Max circled each room methodically, sniffing every corner before settling at the foot of Emily's bed, his usual post. Some things the fire couldn't change. As summer turned to fall, the Thompsons returned to their rebuilt home. The walls smelled of fresh paint instead of smoke, the floors gleamed with new polish, but Max's medal hung proudly in a shadow box by the front door, a reminder of what really made a home. One chilly evening, as the family gathered around their new fireplace, Max stretched out on the rug, his fur warm from the flames. Emily curled against him, her fingers buried in his thick coat. "Dad," she asked quietly, "do you think Max knew? That night? That he could have?" Mr. Thompson reached down to scratch behind Max's ears. The dog sighed contentedly, his loyal heart beating steady and strong against Emily's side. "I think," her father said softly, "that Max would do it all over again in a heartbeat, because that's what heroes do." Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall, blanketing the world in quiet peace. Inside, safe and warm, a family and their guardian slept soundly, knowing that no matter what tomorrow brought, they would face it together. Years later, on the anniversary of the fire, the Thompsons still gathered around Max's framed medal, now hanging in a place of honor in their rebuilt home. His muzzle had grayed, his steps had slowed, but the quiet wisdom in his eyes remained unchanged. The story of that night had become legend in their town, told and retold at school assemblies and fire safety events. Yet for the Thompsons, the most important lesson wasn't about fame, it was about vigilance and the silent protectors that often go unseen. Fire Chief Reynolds had insisted on installing a state-of-the-art alarm system in their new home, one with voice alerts and strobe lights. "Technology saves lives," he reminded them, but he always added with a chuckle, "though it's no substitute for a dog like Max." The Thompsons became advocates for fire safety, volunteering to speak at community events, their story a living testament to the importance of working smoke detectors and escape plans. Max, now too old for vigorous play, spent his days dozing in sunbeams and keeping a watchful eye on Emily, now a teenager. She still sometimes woke at night, the memory of smoke clinging to her dreams, but a soft nudge from Max's wet nose or the steady weight of his head on her feet always grounded her back to safety. One autumn afternoon, as golden leaves drifted past the windows, Emily sat on the floor beside Max, flipping through a scrapbook of news clippings from the fire. There was the photo of Max receiving his medal, another of the family standing in front of their charred home, and one of Whiskers, now passed on, curled in Max's paws the day after the rescue. "You know," Emily murmured, running her fingers over Max's graying ears, "they say animals don't understand things like bravery, but I think you knew exactly what you were doing." Max exhaled a contented sigh, his tail thumping once against the floor. Outside, the wind chimes twirled, their melody soft and familiar. The Thompson story had become one of survival, of loss and rebuilding, but above all, it was a story of loyalty, the kind that barks in the dark, that leads you through smoke, that comes back for you no matter the cost. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, Max closed his eyes, his work done, his family safe. Some heroes wear capes, others wear collars, and the greatest of them leave paw prints not just on floors, but on hearts.